Welcome to Locos Only Cantina.
Mixing it up with
Brandon
and Cherie.
What's up, guys? Hey, welcome to the new show.
Welcome, you guys. So we had an amazing weekend. I didn't really know how amazing it was gonna be, but it's been kind of a wild ride, and we're going to talk about that and what it brought us to this last weekend and how we're moving forward.
We've had some shit on the mind that we have wanted to do for some time now, and due to, I know none of you guys feel like this because you're all like ultra confident and got all your shit down and together and don't give any fucks about what people think, but we've been concerned about what, like, man, is it something we should do? Are people gonna think we're stupid? Is it silly? Is it what? Who knows what, right? But
it's being able to have that confidence, but really you don't have confidence unless you have competence, right? Unless you just jump right in and you start working on it, you're never gonna have the confidence that you're seeking for. Confidence is built off of just jumping in and actually doing it.
Yeah. And also not having any delusions that some people are going to talk shit. Some people are going to be assholes. And you know what?
Yeah.
Fuck you if that's you, right? But if you can gain something from what we have to say, and I hope you can, that's why we're here, okay? So we have wanted to do a relationship / marriage podcast for some time. We always just sort of thought we were like a normal married couple.
Yeah.
Until we had several people tell us that just being involved in our circle of friends, being involved in the shit that we do, kind of changed their lives and their perspective on things. We like to have fun. We just assumed that most people like to have fun.
Yeah, you kind of grow up like Brandon and I are actually both the babies in our family, right? So we're a little bit more maybe the wild child. I don't know.
By far the most attractive.
Yeah. What? No, but I think for some reason, like, it kind of brought a different perspective in life out of us. We learned a lot from our older siblings, I think, and we just kind of know how to play a little bit more than other people, where a lot of other couples, they kind of get content in their relationships and they think that that's what they're supposed to have because that's what their parents had, that's what their grandparents had, and they end up kind of living a boring life and just watching TV all day long.
They get married and they think that, okay, now we're just mom and dad, right? Which is cool, right? Kids need a mom and dad, but kids also need to see the example of a successful mom and dad. And I don't mean success as in money and all that shit. I mean like success as in happy life, right? Enjoying yourself, having fun, being healthy.
Yeah, and I think that with our friends coming to us and telling us that we've changed things in their own lives, we thought we were normal. We thought we were doing the normal thing because even though we have had a lot of hard things that we've gone through, we've been through moments where we were thinking of divorce.
Twice.
We have been in really dark places as a relationship. We've been married for 18 years. And if you think 18 years didn't bring on issues, problems, things that we've had to go through to be able to figure out how to be best friends. And sometimes you start to fall out of love with each other and you need to do certain things. I mean, it's just not luck. We're not lucky to have this relationship.
It's not luck. I was on a podcast the other day with a dude that I have tremendous respect for, and I agree with. I mean, he and I are like in line like 90% of the time. 10% of the time, I'm like, yeah, I don't know, right? And we kind of caught into this discussion, and he's like, well, you guys know why you've been so good. It's pure luck, right? It's just luck. And I'm like, no, dude, it's because I live intentionally, right? Yeah. There are things I do on purpose, right? Like all this right here, all that on purpose, right? And I say that in jest, right? It's kind of like, that's a joke, right? Like, but no, but for real, like staying healthy, staying fit, staying attractive, right? And also doing certain things and behaving certain ways, right? I've noticed in our life, the times that we start to have hard times, and I can't change her. So the only thing that I can ever do to improve things is look within, right? And I can see clear as day when I look back, the times that were hard, a lot of the times it's because I was slipping in certain ways.
And vice versa. I mean,
it happens both ways, but I'm just me, right? I can't talk for her, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's things in a relationship, and I really recommend if you are going to listen to our podcast and follow and just hear our stories, because we're not perfect, but we've figured out some things to apply to our lives to make our relationship better and stronger throughout the years. But if you're listening to this, I recommend listening to it together, because one of the hardest things I have seen in our relationship is he'll listen to something and he'll be like, okay, you need to listen to this.
Listen to this shit. This will fix your shit right here, right?
And when your partner comes at you and says, this is what's wrong with you, you need to listen to this.
You might be right, but it's not going to work. It's not
going to be received the right way.
I remember one time, my dad bought my mom a book. It was a Dr. Laura book. And if you've ever heard her, I think she's amazing. I used to listen to her show a lot when she was on here in Utah. I'd drive around. I had a window cleaning company at the time, and I always had like talk radio on. And she had this book called The Proper Care and Feeding of Husbands, right? Now, just from the name, you're going to think it's a very misogynistic book, but it's not, right? I've read the book. It's a great book. And it's not a male-based misogynistic book. But the name sounds like that. And so my dad bought my mom this book. She took the book from his hands, went over, opened up the counter, and dumped that shit straight in the trash can, right? That's not really the best way it goes, right? And as I say, when I have issues or when we've had issues, the only thing I've learned that I can do is look within and change me and do things on myself, and hopefully she'll respond, right? So we have all these examples, all this bullshit we've been through, and we've come out the other end. We feel like on top, right? We get along better now than we ever have. Sex life is off the hook. We're going to talk about sex in this show too, so that's fun, right?
Yeah, that's really, a lot of people like to say that sex is an important part in the relationship, but I am the woman in the relationship, and usually it's the women who say, I don't like sex, I feel too tired to have sex. And it really comes down to a lot of things within sex that is around that actually you're having an issue with. That's not actually just about sex. And we'll talk about that later. That's kind of subject fun for another time.
Another day. But what I want to talk, I guess our point is this, right? Endless subjects that I think we have to discuss. And I think that we can be some value. And also along the way too, I think it'll just be good for us just to do this, right? And it's something that the cool thing about like YouTube and podcasts and stuff like that is it never goes away, right? And so when we're like 90 fucking dead, who knows what, maybe our kids, grandkids might be like, oh, our grandparents were really weird and crazy and they had this cool show. And maybe they could even learn from it. I don't know.
We have teenagers, and they're kind of at the point where they feel a little too cool to listen to our advice all the time, right? But something that I learned throughout any relationship is it's hard for somebody to take something in and incorporate it in their lives unless they're ready to hear that message, unless they're ready to take action on it. Our kids think that they know everything because they're teenagers, and one day they're going to have a moment where they're like, okay, I'm having these relationships and they're not working out. And I'm not sure why this isn't working out for me. And maybe by leaving this legacy, we're able to help them see how it can work out. And not just work out, not just be content, but to have a badass relationship to where you actually want to have date night every week. You want to get home and rip each other's clothes off. And a lot of you guys who are actually listening because of the amazing things that happened this weekend.
That we're about to discuss here. So I guess we've sort of gotten to the point where we had this plan. We were a little scared to do it. Yeah. I think we have lots of cool things to say, and I think we can be useful, hopefully. But we had a catalyst this weekend, and this is why we've actually recorded like three episodes so far, but we haven't shared them. And we're going to use those as practice, because after this weekend,
it kind of changed our whole trajectory and
Yeah.
the way that we want to do it. And mostly that was because of how many people came up to us after this weekend. After my husband so lovingly.
You're getting ahead of the story again, okay?
Okay,
so let me back up just a tad, okay? So
tell me the story, baby.
I'm gonna tell you a story, okay? And I'm gonna be really real, and we're gonna go back actually, because this goes back a few years, okay? So before we moved to Hawaii, which we did, and we'll probably discuss that on another show, we're really fucking crazy, and we sold our house and everything, and jumped on a fucking airplane with nothing but a few bags and boxes, and started our life out there. But that's something we did back in 19, okay? Now, a year or so before that, we had a really rough time.
Yeah.
And like a really rough time. Like, this was the second time that we almost were like split, right? Well, I had a good friend that called me out on some shit, and he shared some things with me. And him sharing these things with me, a couple books, it led me down this rabbit hole of let's see here, how deep do I want to go in this? Anyways, it basically led me down this rabbit hole of not so much, I don't know, I'll just say it helped me really learn who I was. Who I was and what I was doing, or the lack of what I was doing, that she was responding to me in certain ways, right? Like I said, I can't change her, but I can change me, right? So I started to dig into this stuff, and I really just started to work on me, right? And in working on me, I discovered these authors and these podcasters and YouTubers that I liked a lot. And I really just dug into all this stuff. I engrossed myself in this shit for like 2 years. Through this whole process, and we're going to have plenty of time, I'm sure, in future episodes, we'll go back and we'll dig into that, because that's some real shit too.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get to where we were this weekend here. So through this process, I discovered this dude named Sean Whalen. You can see my hat here. Lions, not sheep, okay? I didn't really know who Sean was, but I discovered his brand, okay? And I thought it was cool. It was, so as I discovered his brand, I figured out that, this dude's actually sort of involved in the same space that I've been listening to and actively involved in, and all this stuff, things that have helped me out. And so I started paying more attention to him. And then after COVID, we moved back from Hawaii. Not after COVID, during like the start of it, our life got fucking turned all upside down. We left Hawaii. We came back here. Sean's brand really like skyrocketed at that time, right? Because I don't really care what your political beliefs or how you felt about all that stuff, but there were a lot of people that could jive with his brand, right? Lions, not sheep. So I started to buy some of his gear and stuff, and I was following his stuff. Now I finally discovered that he actually had a mastermind group, right? And I thought to myself, I'm like, a lot of these other guys I follow, they also coach and they have these programs and all this stuff. But the thing I liked about Sean, besides his message, was that he was local here where I'm from in Utah. And so I'm always very skeptical about things. And so I just thought to myself, I'm like, he's from here. Eventually, I'll run into somebody that's in the den. He calls it the Lion's Den. And I can ask them questions. Now, if I feel like it's worth it, then I would love to get involved. But I'm always skeptical, and all these gurus out there and shit like that, right? And so I did wait, and I eventually ran into like 2 or 3 dudes that were involved in the den, and they're all like, man, it was fucking life changing. You have to get involved, right? So it's not a huge amount per month, but it is a cost. But I said, okay. And so next time they open up the den, I'm in. I had to wait like 6 months or so. because they only open it up like once or twice a year. So I finally did, and I got in the den. They got this cool app, and you can scroll through and connect with people. And admittedly, I did get involved on a big part just for, I thought the networking part would be good, right? But Sean has, he follows a system he calls Core 4. And one of those 4 pillars is relationships, okay? So it's about business, it's about lifestyle, it's about all this stuff, right? But the belief is, yeah, you might have a badass marriage, but if you're fucking broke, well, that's no good, and you're not happy there. You might be rich as shit, but if you're a fat fuck, well, that's not good either, right? Or if you're rich and you're fit, but you're spiritually bankrupt, which we'll talk about that, and I'll be very real with that. I still don't know where I stand there, right? But if you're spiritually bankrupt, that's not great either, right? So he's got these 4 principles. And the one that applies to this right here is the relationship stuff, right? And also our business, right? Because I guess if this becomes something cool, then that's what this will be for us, right? But anyway, so I got tickets. So there's a yearly event they hold called Lions Den Live, and it's not like crazy cheap, but it's not like super expensive either. But it's a few bucks, and I thought, I'm like, you know what? People are flying in from this. People flew from the East Coast. There was somebody from across the pond, like another country that flew here, and I thought, all I got to do is jump in the car and drive that way. So I can, I might as well pay for the ticket. So I told Cherie that I bought one. I'm like, if I'm in this thing, I want to be all in. I want to at least experience it. I'm going to go to this thing. And she's like,
yeah, I was like, yeah, if you're in it, go all in. I mean, this year I knew I wanted our lives to change in a big way. And I don't know, I was excited for him to go. I didn't
you were
really
skeptical
know,
though, right?
Yeah, I didn't know
Sean's
really
kind of like me though.
what it was all about.
Sean
so.
swears and he's really blunt and everything like that, right? And so
yeah, but I definitely wanted him to go, and in that moment I actually was like, should I go with you? Like I actually wasn't sure if it was for me or not, because I didn't know anything about it.
At first I think it was just, if I'm wrong and somebody's on here and wants to comment, if I'm wrong, I think it was just for den members. But then I think they opened it up for you to bring your spouse too. But we had scheduling conflicts, we thought, with her. So she's like, oh, I don't know. Eventually she's like, I've decided I want to go. And I'm like, well, they fucking closed the tickets, right? You can't go now.
Yeah.
So then they announced through the app that Sean, along with some other people, had decided that they were going to give away some tickets for free for people that were maybe spouses or people that couldn't afford to come. So we could apply to have somebody come for free. And so I sent a text out to this girl, Stephanie, and I said, hey, because her and I had talked about Cherie trying to come before. And I said, hey, my wife's schedule cleared up. I would love one of those generosity tickets if I could. And so she quick and got back to me and said, you're all set. So now we got Cherie coming. And
we kind of had, with recording these other sessions for this podcast, I've had a really hard time. We actually kind of went through something the week before going, or this last week. And it's one of those relationship things that we have to talk about, and how big communication is in a relationship. And through the podcast, I'd started another podcast because I wanted to get comfortable with being in front of a camera or being in front of a microphone. I work in marketing, and I've always been on the back side of the camera, not on the front side, and I just didn't know if I could be that person in front. So I kind of started doing that, and it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to be able to just put yourself out there, and it's hard. And I kind of just decided to do that with fitness and goals and reaching your goals as a woman. And it kind of took up a lot of my time. But it was just for practice for us to be able to do this. And the thing that was hard about that is all of a sudden people started to like what I was putting out there, even though it was just for practice. And it
because she's badass.
It became something hard to think that something else was going to come about. But we both had different ideas as to why I was procrastinating,
No.
but there was one big reason why I didn't want to do it.
I was super down with hers, and I don't think she should stop hers. It's not a practice thing. She needs to do her own too, because she's awesome at it. This was due to our conversations. These are the things that I thought she was just concerned about me, or concerned about. Was on hers. She's really sweet, and she says nice words and all this stuff. When you get me on this show, I'm gonna say shit like fuck, damn, hell, and bastard, right? That's a little bit hard for her to take, right? Again, this is probably a big part of why I jive with Sean, is like, he's super blunt and says fuck, shit, hell, damn, and bastard too, right? In front of 1,000 people. And people think he's awesome, right? And so I wanted this show to be super raw, super real. We're going to talk about our bullshit, right? I mean, maybe not everything, because certain things are probably too personal, right, to share on a show like this. But for the most part, I'm an open book, right? I know that she is not as comfortable with that.
I just come from so he speaks his way on a daily basis. This isn't just for the podcast. This is just the way we are. He is who he is, and I love everything about him. But growing up, I've always had a certain image that I felt like I had to keep. I kind of felt like I had to be at a certain perfection my whole life. And the crazy thing is that I was on the same page as him and wanting it to be raw. But when it really comes down to it, when it really comes down to pushing the button and sending this out, I'm going to change my whole story, right? And that's one of the things we learned this weekend that we're getting into. You're not going to
change your story. You're going to change your story in a few other people's eyes.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they're going to realize that maybe it's not quite what they thought, right?
Yeah. So
which is okay.
So because I've lived this certain way and trying to reach perfection my whole life, it kind of was something that I felt like was scary to me. It was just scary. I wanted to do it, but it was just scary to me for me to put myself out there in a different way and have people see me in a raw way and talk about topics that, for a lot of you guys that met with us this weekend, my family means a lot to me. I'm very close to my parents. I'm very close to my siblings, and the way that I live my life is very different than my siblings. They're very different than my parents. And I have so much respect for my family, so much respect for my parents. And I'm a daddy's girl. And I played sports growing up, and my dad was my coach. And we were always really close. And there's things that have happened in my life, and we'll talk about those later, that kind of have hindered our relationship in a way, I feel like. But it's still really great. And I didn't want to create something that, we kind of, even as adults, we want to have our parents be proud of us. We want to leave a legacy that they're proud of, and that they can just look at you or give you a hug and say, I'm proud, And so that was kind of one of those things that I'm like, okay, I got to overcome this. I've got to beat this, because I can't always stand in the shadow of the way that I was brought up and not give my story to people, because I know that I'm not the only woman who feels this way. I'm not the only daddy's girl who feels this way, who feels like you can't be yourself and still have somebody be proud of you. I know that that's something that others struggle with. And I learned more of that this weekend by having the feedback from a lot of people. So
yeah. So we now I've already somewhat well, not somewhat. I have, I believe, overcome that part, right? I'm the youngest. My dad's passed away years ago, but my mom and I have a very interesting relationship. I have no fears of telling my mom exactly how I feel or say, or in using the words that I use. That's just how we are, right? So I don't necessarily have those fears, but I understand her fears. But I also understand, though, that you can't let your fears or let somebody else's opinion of you stop you from achieving your dreams or the things that you want to do, right? And even Cherie did and said in one of her other podcasts on her show, there's this quote that a friend of hers gave her that really means a lot to her, that says what?
It's something that I actually needed to push even my other podcast out, and she's actually somebody that really inspires me. But she said to me when I told her I was trying to get this podcast out, it took me from December to March to actually put out this first podcast. And she said to me, look in the mirror and tell yourself this. So I actually recommend and challenge all of you guys who are afraid to take that first step to put yourself out there, to post something. I really encourage you guys to do the same thing because it was something that really helped me. But she said, look in the mirror and say this. It is none of my business what other people think of me. Think about that. It is none of my business what other people think of me. We're trying to make it our business what these other people who don't matter in this world, right? They don't matter what they say to us, but we let that hinder our growth. We let that paralyze us and keep us from reaching things.
But then though, right, there's levels, right, of that shit, right?
Yeah.
Because Sheree said that on her show, and she was telling people, and she fucking like meant it, right? Like, there's none of your goddamn business what those fuckers think of you, right? But then when it comes to doing this, and I'm gonna say bad words, and we're gonna talk about sex and taboo shit, how did you feel about your? It's really simple, guys, to not give a fuck about the people you don't know.
Yeah.
It's not as simple to not give a fuck about your like immediate family though, right?
Especially like there's probably a lot of you that are like, well, my parents screwed up my life. I don't care what they think. My parents have actually been a big support in my life. They've been with me through so many things, you know, always there for me growing up and everything. Like they are amazing in so many ways. And I always wanted to know that I constantly want to know that they're proud of me. I want to know that they see me as being a good mom, as being a good wife, as being a good example. But my example of what I am as a wife and what I am as a mother is a little different than what they grew up teaching, or that what I grew up being taught.
A lot different.
A lot different.
In her household, the word "butt" was a swear word, right? So we can fully understand the fear, right? But I think though, in theory, I'm not saying this is how it is in real life, but if you could give them a full understanding of what you're capable of and what your dreams are and what your life should be, they probably wouldn't want to hold you back, right? But still, you just have to get to the point where you're like, I'm just fucking gonna send it, right? So she went through the thing being scared of what people that she didn't know would think. She still talks all nice and sweet on her other podcast, but this one though was really hard for her, and I knew that, right? And so we go to the den meeting, the Lions Den Live, and we listened to a couple amazing speeches. Sean was the first one up there, and he's just like fucking amazing, this guy. Garrett White, Sean's mentor, spoke. And we get to this point where Sean and Garrett and Jeremy Finlay are on stage. I think that's his name. Sorry, dude, if I got you wrong. I'm almost sure that's his name. All three of them on stage, and they're taking questions. And I had a question in my mind. Now I'm not a religious dude, and that's a topic for another day. But it was interesting because there were 2 times at this thing where, man, I just had a feeling in my gut that I knew if I ignored it, I was gonna regret it. And I just, if you're religious, you would call that the spirit, or you would call it God talking. If you're not that way, you might call it source or the universe. I don't fucking know, and I don't care. I just knew I felt like I had to do something, and I thought to myself, you're gonna get your ass up, and Shree's either gonna thank you or she's gonna hate you.
And when he got up and he went and got in line to ask a question, I had this feeling in my gut. Oh, hell no. Did not mention my name. I knew what he was doing because we kind of...
Oh, hell no. No, sometimes she channels her... So she grew up in Magna, Utah, which is a little bit of the hood, right? So sometimes, oh, hell no. Right?
I'm a little gangster girl at heart, I'm sorry.
So I get up there, and there's there's like 6 people in line in front of me on this side. That other side of the room's got like 8, right? So it takes some time, and so I'm just sitting there getting more and more and more and more fucking nervous, but I just know that I have to do what I have to do. And so I get the mic finally, and my question was not for me, okay? All you dudes out there know that this is how this goes sometimes, right? You can talk until you're blue in the face, either to your spouse or your kids or whoever, and wives probably know this too, right? But unless sometimes it takes somebody else to say that thing for them to be like, oh, light bulb, right? Like, that makes sense, right? So what I was trying to do is I was trying to fish for Sean to give Cherie an answer that I knew that he would give. And my question that I was trying to get to was something like this. Like, listen, this question is not for me. We're trying to start a podcast. My wife is deathly afraid of what her immediate family will think because we're going to talk about some weird shit. What's the advice that you would have for her? Now, Garrett, if you're listening to me right now, that was pretty crazy, and thank you for making me like push through it, right? Because that was hard to do. But it all ended up the way it was supposed to be. Garrett was kind of giving me a bad time. And then Sean finally spits out exactly the answer that I was expecting from him. So I'm like, cool, we're set. And all of a sudden I'm walking back to my chair. And all of a sudden Cherie's walking up to the stage. And I'm like thinking, what the fuck is going on?
He didn't even hear, but Garrett actually called me up on stage, and I'm like, well, they made me stand up while they were talking about this, and I'm like, oh great, this is not what I wanted. Again, I've always been on the other side of the camera. I'm not one that I really want to be the center of attention. Maybe when I have a few drinks in me, like I definitely want to be the center of attention for some reason, but
not in front of 1,000 people.
Not in front of 1,000 people. I was not like super excited about that, but you know, sometimes you just gotta realize you gotta level up and put that fear aside. So I think it's just her up on stage. I just think they're gonna go and work with her. So I go and I park my ass in my seat. It's like they're gonna tear her apart.
She's gonna get what she needs to get right now, right? So I go and I park my ass in my seat, and all of a sudden Garrett points at me. He's like, "You come here," and I'm like, "Oh shit!" Right? So we inadvertently found ourselves on stage in front of 1,000 people. Going through this, hey, look at my guitar. Looks like I have horns right now.
Yeah, you're the devil.
Right. So we find ourselves on stage and in front of all these people, and it's scary as hell. I mean, I'm not a super shy person, but I stutter, right? And we'll talk about that another show too, because I'd love to tell the story there too. But I mean, for the most part, I've overcome it, and it's not a thing I think about most of the time, but I mean, let's be real, in front of 1,000 people, you fucking think about that shit, right? Yeah. So we're talking and stuff, and they're making us do this thing, and I don't know, what did you think?
Well, so I know that many of you who are listening actually saw and heard this whole thing. So we're just repeating something that you saw, right? But I think it's important for you guys to know the feelings that we both had, because a lot of people look at our lives, even like, because I put a lot of stuff out on social media from our lives because I want to be super mom. I want to be the super wife. I want to be amazing in every aspect of my life, and people will comment to me and say, oh, your life is so perfect. And I want people to realize getting up on stage in front of people, 1,000 people, that was not easy for either of us.
Scary as hell.
Scary.
The weird thing was for me is I wanted to be. So we actually had an interesting experience, okay? When we went in there, and I'm guilty of this. This was me. This came out of my mouth, right? We kind of sat towards the back because this is not a huge venue, right? And so I'm like, there's no bad seats in this house. Let's sit back here, and that way we won't get called up on stage. I intentionally...
He literally said that as we walked in there.
I intentionally played small, right? But then I almost immediately regretted it, though, too.
Yeah.
Not enough to get my ass up and move and change seats, especially because once people filtered in, all the seats in the front filled up, right? But I did. Like, I intentionally played small, and I almost immediately regretted that.
And I could tell that he regretted it. I know him, and I knew that he was going to not be happy with the situation. But I had to let him do him.
But there's a part of me though that's like, no, I don't really want to do that. And there's another part of me that's like, no, you fucking need to do that, right? And so through whatever you want to call it, right? Like all the people there at this thing would have called it God. I might call it source or the universe. I don't really fucking care. But something spoke to me, got my ass in line, got Garrett to drag our asses up on stage, and we ended up on stage, and it was actually like a life-changing, altering type thing, right? And not just for this thing right here. There was so much more than that. But they did though commit us. They're like, we need a commitment date. When are you gonna launch this thing, right? And we're gonna launch it the 19th.
Yeah,
and,
Father's Day.
Father's Day next week, a week from now. And so we did. We committed to record our first one this morning, which I said we've already done 3, but we're going to just use those as practice because we have some new thoughts here. But yeah, we're going to record this one. This one's out next week, and there will be the start of our new show.
One of the things that I want to say though is part of what was life-changing for me in that moment was just the fact that in that moment, being up there on stage and being able to say that this was going to happen, we're going to launch this, we're going to do this, I realized in that moment, and we had been talking about this at the event prior to us getting up on stage, and so I already had it in my mind, but I realized that I was living my parents' story. I was living that perfect life, that perfect way that I felt like I had to be, and I had to show people that I was living somebody else's story. And one of the big things that I learned from this was that you got to rewrite your story. And you got to rewrite your story because our legacy is very different than what we grew up learning and living. And how do we ever change the way that our kids think? How do we ever change the way the world thinks? And thinking that marriages can't work out. How many marriages are failing right now? What is the divorce rate right now, Brennan?
I believe it's like 55%, and according to her other coach that she has on her other show, he always adds this on, and I'm sure he's right. Like I've never seen the statistic, but I would guess he's right. It's like 55% of marriages end in divorce, and 25% of the ones that don't get divorced probably ought to be divorced, right?
Yeah.
So what does that leave you with? 20% that are like actually enjoying themselves, right?
Yeah.
And I would say that might still be generous.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't,
Because we have marriages that are like sticking through it, but do they actually have fun? Are they actually married to their best friend? Because guess what? This guy is my best friend. When I have the greatest news that I need to tell somebody, I know he's the guy that I need to tell because he's my biggest support. I know that if I have something really hard that I'm going through, I'm telling this guy because he is my best friend and he's my biggest support. And I know there's this big movement going on with women, and this is something that I think is very important, and a lot of women aren't talking about it. They're afraid to put their message out there because all of us women want to be a supporter of the feminist movement, but the feminist movement actually has gone a little too far. And that's something that I have to say as a woman. And something that we talked about yesterday at the event was, and I love this, they had a panel of all of the relationship, Sean Whalen's relationship, and a few of the other people, I don't remember everybody's name.
The other speakers.
Yeah. But the cool thing about it was...
And their wives were on stage
yeah.
with them, right? One couple in particular we're actually going to take out to eat, and I'm super stoked about that because they're fucking awesome. So... Scott and Ann, if you're listening, we're going to still hang out.
Mostly because, you know what? In a relationship, you never will stop learning how to have a better relationship. And that's why I think it's so important to find other couples who have rock star relationships, badass relationships to learn from.
Oh, are you going to pull a hair off my hat now? She made me stop the last time we began because she had a hair that was flying right there, and I'm like... I gotta fix it. She's like, now we have to start over. No, you were starting to go somewhere though, right?
Yeah,
panel,
so...
And the girl asked what, and they answered how?
Yeah, so the panel, I can't remember exactly what the girl asked, but...
Something about being feminine and masculine versus masculine and stuff.
So she's saying, you know, I have a business, my husband has a business, and we struggle to find the power, right?
Because she's a strong woman.
Because she's a strong woman.
And, you know.
And I definitely want women to realize, like, I was a stay-at-home mom, and eventually I realized that I didn't want to just be a stay-at-home mom. I wanted to have a career for myself. I wanted to be a strong, passionate woman going after my hopes and dreams too. And I think that's the biggest heartache in the world in relationships today, is that we have such a power movement with women, and this power movement is actually being very confused.
Counterproductive, actually, right? And so she asked this question, and I'm like, all of a sudden, like, tuned in, right? I'm like, okay, let's see how these wives up here answer. Because they're all badasses, right? Like,
these
Saxony,
women were
Waylon.
total badasses.
Yeah, they're awesome. And they're married to fucking kings, right? Queens and kings, right? And I was instantly tuned in because I'm like, okay, let's see what they're going to say. And every woman up there answered in the perfect way. We're like, listen, just because I'm feminine, you know, doesn't mean I'm not powerful, right? There's this weird paradox I see that goes on with the feminist movement. Feminists, feminine's in the name, you would think they would want to be feminine. Feminists are becoming masculine, right? They want to be the equal to men, right? But all these women up there are like, listen, I'm very feminine, and we have our own roles. He's very masculine, and he has his own roles. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's complementary. I have something to tell you. Men and women, we're not fucking equal. We're not the same, right? And I don't mean that on like some oppressive level, right? Like you're stupid and you're a chick and like stay down there, right? We're just fucking not the same. We're not the same creatures, right? We don't think the same. We don't act the same. We don't look the same. We don't have the same hormones. We don't have the same... I mean, we have majority of the same parts, but not all the same parts, right? We're not the same, right? And so being masculine and feminine, that's meant to complement. Yeah. But there's this weird movement where, for some reason, that's seen as like this bad thing, right? But all these wives answered in the perfect way. But what did Sean say at the end of that, though?
I might screw it up.
That's okay. But... Just start sucking right now. That's what Sean said. If you think you're gonna suck, just start right now, right?
So the thing that I loved about it, and I kind of thought this way, but he put it in so profoundly, and just basically said that we are building kingdoms. We're building kingdoms, and the fastest way to destroy a kingdom is the woman in the relationship, because she really is, and I think it was Amy, she said women are the backbone of that relationship, of that kingdom, right? And what can destroy a kingdom faster than anything? It's the person that you are with, it's the woman that actually is your powerhouse that's standing next to you that can destroy you completely. There's many things that a man can go through in their career and everything, but what destroys a king faster than anything is the queen. And here's the thing that I wanted to actually add to that, because I thought that was very profound. And if you're building a kingdom, if you have a relationship and you have a king and you're the queen, what happens if you are both building different kingdoms? If he's going and he's building his own kingdom and I'm building my own kingdom, that's going to cause contention.
Each of those kingdoms needs a partner.
Yeah.
So that king's gonna end up with a new queen, and that queen's gonna end up with a new king, and then you might as well have the same fucking kingdom, right?
Yeah, but here's what happens in that situation, right? Like, you're both building your own kingdom. Well, guess what? When you have arguments, when you have things that make your relationship hard, because guess what? You're gonna have stuff that's hard in your relationship. If you're just barely getting into a marriage or in a relationship, if you think life's gonna be easy and happy and go lucky, you're wrong. If you don't think that you're gonna have to work through your relationship every day of your life, then you're wrong. And if you're both building separate kingdoms, when that contention happens, what's gonna happen? If you're building two different kingdoms, guess what? Because we are women and we're powerful, and men are powerful, like, I know, because especially the movement that's going on, if he pisses me off, guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna send my army to go take care of that motherfucker, right? So
bring it.
So how does that help you grow together? Where does that power struggle in the home? And this is the crazy thing, and I'm saying this to you women because I am a strong woman who wants my own career, that has my own hopes and dreams. And this is the power struggle that we have in the home. And if we can't create a kingdom within our home, how do we create a world where we all can come together? We're going to constantly have division. And if we're not teaching our kids that they have the most powerful kingdom together in their relationships, then they're going to all be building their separate kingdoms, and we're just going to constantly have fighting.
Right.
And so I love that, but I just wanted to add that on there, that if you are a strong woman who has hopes and dreams, you need your king just like your king needs you. And it is so huge to be the support of your king. And it is so huge for him to be the support of the queen.
Yeah, and just because you support him doesn't fucking by default mean that he doesn't support you and your shit.
Exactly. I have so many women that talk to me, and
I don't understand this whole weirdness the world has, right?
We feel like only one person can have power and only one person can have strengths in a relationship. No. But I will say, I have to tell you, I started my other podcast 2 months ago, and when you pick the right king to be in your life, because that's what it's really about. We have all these women that have all this trauma, and they blame men for everything, for a lot of things, because they've had bad relationships, and they all of a sudden attribute everything in life to be the man's fault, right? But I will say, this man right here, who is my best friend, every time I had a hard time putting a podcast out there or putting a Facebook Live out there, this guy came to me and he's like, you did an amazing job. He was my biggest support and the biggest help for me to actually push the button.
The first one she did, she had made all these ads like, oh, there's something new coming out next week on this date. And then like the date came and she's sitting there in front of her computer with her hand in the air like this. And she's like
I
crying,
could
right?
not push the button.
She's getting like, tears are starting to come down, and I'm standing there, I'm like, fucking press the button. And she's like, I can't get myself. I'm like, fucking send it, right? And I'm like pushing her hand down, right? And she finally like pressed the button and sent it out there, and like tears like.
I literally, you guys, it was the scariest thing I've ever done in my life to put myself out there, and I had every emotion go through my body in 5 seconds. I cried, I had anxiety, I almost like passed out. It was crazy.
But it's dope though, and this is gonna be a good transition into the next thing I want to say, because we only have like 13 minutes left, and I have to go because I'm doing something cool too. I think I believe in that we need tribes, right? Which this Lion's Den is a rad tribe. I'm getting involved in another tribe too. I ride motorcycles, and I'm joining a MC, a club. So I'm gonna go to this thing this afternoon for that. But that's why I need to leave. But the next thing I wanted to say though, but like, I mean, imagine if you guys could support each other like that. And we haven't always done that, right? Like,
no,
you just have to learn it and recognize when you do and try to do it more often, right? But imagine like that's awesome in your own home, right? But what almost do we never have, right? When you tell your friends or your family that you're gonna do some big thing, what's the result, or what's the reaction you get most of the time? 9 out of 10 times, what do you get? Hey, I'm gonna launch a new business, brother or sister.
So I ate tacos the other day,
right?
And they were
fucking
really good.
Crickets, right? Because they don't believe in you.
No.
They don't, right? So I don't know if I just came up with this or what, but if you want to change your vibe, change your tribe, right? One thing that was amazing, so after we got our asses dragged up on stage and we were all like nervous and like shaking and probably looked like dumb shits, right, up there. I don't know, at least in the pictures where we weren't talking, we looked sexy. I posted them on Facebook, you can check them out. But no, so afterwards though, that was day one of it. So during lunch and dinner and networking afterwards, and the whole next day, it was amazing, the flood of people that came up and are like, man, you gotta fucking launch that shit. You guys are awesome. I can't wait to hear it. I've even gotten messages on Facebook this morning, the 19th, right? Imagine what your life could be like if all of a sudden you were surrounded by people that fucking believed you could do shit, right?
Yeah.
That's fucking like mind blowing, right?
And I think that was the biggest motivating factor for me too, is because I even had many women come up to me and say, hey, I want to know more of your thoughts on this. And because there are things that women just don't say. We're afraid to say them because we're afraid that these outspoken feminists will come at us and say all these awful things. But I'm ready to take it on, girl. So if you have things to say about me and things to say in your opinion, give me your opinion. I'm going to listen. I'm going to read it. I'll see what you have to say. I may not agree with you.
Not just about you, but they might have advice to ask.
Yeah.
I had 2 or 3 dudes afterwards walk up to me and be like, hey, I can't wait to hear your show in advance. Can I ask you something? Because I'm struggling with my wife or with my family or with something like this. What do you think, right? And I'm just some fucking schmo that got dragged up on stage. And all of a sudden, they're interested, right? And I give them my advice, and they were stoked to practice it, right? So.
And we're not perfect, and that's the thing, and that's what people need to realize is a relationship is something you're constantly learning. Even in business, you have to constantly learn. If you think you know everything about a relationship, about your career, about raising kids is hard. We have 3 kids, and it's hard.
But that's hard, and that's your life, right? And this is another giant takeaway that I had, is everybody has a story. And everybody's story, somebody else needs to hear, right?
Yeah.
So Sean, one of the other speakers that Sean had, man, I'm going to mess up. Ryan, I think is his name. He has another tribe down in Texas, another mastermind group. But him and Sean committed, like, I think, what they say, like 2016 or 15 or some shit like that they were gonna post a video on Facebook every single day for the rest of their lives, right? And actually, that's what built Lions Not Sheep. Is Sean just started to talk, right? Eventually, he had a post go viral, and then things just sort of went from there. But the lesson to take from that is that, man, we all have a story. And just because you're going to tell your story doesn't mean that you're expected to be perfect or that you are perfect. We fucking are not, right? But we have a story, and that story is probably useful to at least someone out there, right? And if doing this is fun, which it is, it's good for us along the way. And if it helps somebody else, and maybe you're interested, and maybe you might share it with somebody that needs to hear something and all that, if our story can help. Like this morning, I'll do this really quick here. So I stutter. I have since I was a kid. There was the majority of my life I couldn't string 2 or 3 words together. Super hard, super miserable. We're gonna talk more about that another time. But I've gotten to the point in my life where I almost don't even think about it, right? But I kind of have been thinking about this story thing since this weekend, and so I jumped on. I poured some coffee this morning, went out. I sat on my front porch swing out there, and I jumped on a stuttering community that I follow on Facebook. I read through shit sometimes, and I've told Sheree, I'm like, man, it fucking breaks my heart to see all this stuff. Like, I just wish I could give these guys like my experience in life, right, and let them know that it can be okay, right? But you can't, right? But anyways, I'm sitting out there drinking my coffee, and I jumped on there. I went live on the group, and I talked for half an hour. And I've gotten, not like I had a ton of people listening, but I've gotten several people saying, oh, thank you so much. I had to hear that. I can jive with that and stuff like that. And that's just my story, right? We all have our own unique stories. So we're going to share our story here about our life. We're going to be raw. We're going to be real. Eventually, we're going to get high tech enough where we could go like live and people can ask questions and shit like that, I'm sure. But as of right now, it's like this.
But feel free to ask questions. Feel free to
add us on Facebook, Instagram.
Add us, and I mean, the one thing that I think is huge in a relationship is to find others who are working on their relationships and wants to constantly have a good relationship. If you can find friends that actually want to have a good relationship, you'll never understand how that will change your world, and being able to have friends together and make those moments happen to create stronger relationships. That's really important. And I think that if you guys reach out to us and let us know what you're struggling with, or maybe just say, hey, I need to hear about this topic, or I didn't like this, or I liked this, let us know. Like, we really want to know, because this is fun for us, but also we want to do it because we've been through some hard things and we want to share that with you, and we don't know how to help if you guys don't give us feedback. So
unless you ask, we're just gonna tell you stories and talk about
crazy stuff,
weird shit and stuff. So
we thought we were the normal, but we realized after a while we're a bit crazy. We have a little bit of fun together.
Yeah.
A little bit. He's my best friend, and damn, I love going on date nights with him. That's like what we look forward to every night or every week. And sometimes we've been in the moment where I was like, okay, we're really gonna do date night. Like, I'm not really vibing with him. Like,
and
we've been there.
Well, I'm like, it's fucking Wednesday night. Of course we're gonna get your ass in the car. Let's go.
But you just have to make it happen for your relationship and for each other. And we just want to share what we've been through and what we did to get through those hard moments. So. And
I wanted to say, I know that probably 90% of you guys that listen to this right up front will be from the den, because all those that asked me to post it in the den. I just want to say this, like, that was my first Lions Den Live. I didn't really know what to expect. The support is amazing. I genuinely feel like we probably made lifelong friends.
Yeah.
And
lifelong friends that not only are your friends, but they support your hopes and dreams, and they want to see your success. And I will say, I didn't really know a lot about Sean Whalen and any of what this was about. Brennan shared things with me over the past months. But the thing that I loved about it, because you can follow coaching, you can follow different things. But the thing that I loved about this whole experience is when people become successful, they want to just keep being successful and they keep rising. The thing that I loved about Sean and everything that he did this last weekend was that he not only wants to be successful, but he realizes that to be successful, you have to give, you have to serve others, you have to give back to somebody to actually gain what you really want out of life. And he reaches down and he pulled us up on stage when we were nobodies to anybody there, right? He pulled many people up from the prior years or from the den to come and speak for 5 minutes in front of 1,000 people. How monumental was that for these people? And that's a community that I am definitely behind and want to support, because honestly, like, we need those moments to be able to have a stage to say what you want to say. And I love that about Sean, is he wants to see this success in other people, and we feel that way too. We want that. We want to have this badass relationship that we have to spread like a virus, so that people can stop being content in their relationships and actually really enjoy being together and can't wait to spend every moment together when they get to see each other.
And I'm going to use this last moment here to put Sean on the spot. Sean, I know you don't know me. I'm new in the den and everything like that, but I have massive respect. And Sean said that he wants to be on, not our specific stage, but he said from the stage, he's like, I want to be on your stage someday, right? I already said to him once, Sean, I want you on my show. I said it twice, actually. We saw him last night before we left. And I'm going to say it a third time right now, because I'm going to follow through with exactly what we said we would do on stage. And we're going to post this shit in the den on the 19th, along with making it live. And Sean, I can't fucking wait to have you and Sax on the show.
Yeah, you guys are rock stars.
Thank you in advance. And yeah, so I think that's it for now, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
Love you guys. Love everybody that we met this weekend. And honestly, reach out. We love everybody. We want everybody to have amazing relationships.
Peace out. And the rest of the shows, I'm not going to end with this, but Lions Den, fucking love you guys, man. It's been dope. Can't wait to get to know you guys more. So. And
one last thing, we are actually doing the podcast, and we're posting these videos on YouTube as well, and we'll let you know both in case you want to see it as well.
And one last thing, no, I'm kidding. All right, bye guys.
See you guys. Peace out.
Peace out.